There comes a moment in every life when the veil lifts, revealing a profound truth that shakes the foundations of our understanding. Today, dear reader, is that moment for you. You are not here by accident, far from it. Your presence is the product of divine orchestration, a tapestry woven with threads of purpose and destiny. You are a chosen one. Perhaps you've sensed it in the quiet corners of your soul, a stirring that whispers, "There is more for you." And indeed there is. This is your call to rise above doubts, to cast aside the shackles of limitation, and to embrace the extraordinary role for which you were made. To shine, lead, inspire, a life less ordinary awaits. Trust this truth, for it will illuminate your path, transform your perspective, and unleash a power that has long been dormant. Number 1. The choice of the chosen ones. There is a moment, as silent as the whisper of dawn, when the soul senses its purpose. You may feel it now, a stirring deep within. This is no accident. If these words resonate with you, you are among the chosen ones. This is not by chance, it is divine alignment. From the beginning, God has set apart those who would rise, not because they are flawless, but because they are willing. Throughout the scriptures, we see this pattern unfold. Moses, who once stammered in fear, stood boldly before Pharaoh. Esther, an orphan hidden in the shadows, emerged as a queen who would save her people. Even the boy shepherd David, overlooked by the world, was destined to slay a giant and rule a kingdom. These were not perfect people. They doubted, faltered, and struggled. Yet what set them apart was not their strength, but their obedience to the call. They understood that their purpose was not theirs to create, but to uncover, a gift placed within them by God Himself. You too are called. Perhaps you feel unworthy, as Moses did, or insignificant, like David. Perhaps life has cast you into the shadows, as with Esther. But the truth changes everything. Your weaknesses are not disqualifications. They are the very proof that God has chosen you. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. 2 Corinthians 12:9. To be chosen does not mean the path will be easy. It means the journey will matter. You will face doubt, yours and others. The enemy will whisper lies telling you that you are not enough, that the dream placed in your heart is too big. But remember this, if God is for you, who can be against you? Romans 8:31. The same God who parted the Red Sea and raised Lazarus from the dead is at work in your life today. Think of the disciples, ordinary men with no extraordinary qualifications. Fishermen, tax collectors, and skeptics were called not because of what they had, but because of what they were willing to surrender. When Jesus said, "Follow me," they did not ask for a roadmap. They left their nets, their tables, and their doubts behind. They rose, not because they understood, but because they trusted. Now, the call extends to you. What will you do with it? Will you shrink back into the comfort of the familiar? Or will you rise into the unknown, where purpose and destiny collide? God does not call the equipped, He equips the called. Your journey will not be without trial, but it will be saturated with meaning. Every challenge you face is a step closer to becoming who you were created to be. Imagine standing before the great author of the universe, who holds the stars in His hands, yet knows the number of hairs on your head. This same God whispers to you now, "I have chosen you. You are mine." Isaiah 43:1. What greater affirmation could there be? If you embrace this truth, your perspective will shift entirely. Life is no longer a series of random events, but a grand narrative in which you have a vital role. You are not merely existing, you are called to thrive. Love when it is hard, hope when it seems impossible, and believe when the evidence is scarce. The time is now. Lay aside the weight of self-doubt and step forward. You were chosen for such a time as this. God does not need perfection. He seeks a willing heart. Take the first step, however small, and watch how the impossible becomes possible. Remember, you are not alone. The same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead lives in you. Romans 8:11. Lean into His strength, and you will find that what once seemed insurmountable becomes the very platform from which you soar. The world needs you, not because you are extraordinary alone, but because the God who dwells within you is limitless. You are a light in the darkness, a beacon for those who have yet to hear the call. Embrace your purpose, and you will not only transform your life, but the lives of countless others. This is the truth. You are chosen, not by accident, not by coincidence, but by design. The time to rise is now. Number 2, born to lead and shine, a tale of the chosen ones. In the quiet fields outside Bethlehem, beneath a canopy of stars, a boy named Ezra often wandered alone. He was not the strongest among his peers, nor the wealthiest in his family. Yet, a light in his eyes seemed borrowed from the heavens. The elders of his village whispered, "Ezra is different," though none could say precisely why. Ezra, however, felt the weight of their words, for in his heart he carried questions, deep and unrelenting, about the purpose of his life. One evening, as he sat by a well, he heard a voice, not loud, but unmistakable. It spoke with authority, yet carried a kindness that stilled his soul. "Ezra," the voice said, "you were born to lead." Startled, he turned, expecting to see someone, but no one was there. The stars above seemed brighter, their light reaching down as though they had heard the words. Ezra's journey began that night, though he didn't yet understand its magnitude. Days turned to years, and challenges arose like shadows seeking to smother his growing light. He faced ridicule from his peers, doubts from his family, and the gnawing temptation to abandon his path for something simpler. Yet in the quiet moments, he would remember that voice, the words of divine purpose, the identity of the chosen ones. Scripture tells us that the chosen ones are not marked by worldly power or fleeting riches. They are called to lead, to shine in a world often veiled in darkness. Like Ezra, their purpose is not rooted in their strength, but in a higher calling. The prophet Isaiah spoke of such leaders when he declared, "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you." Ezra's story mirrors the journeys of other chosen leaders: Moses, who faltered at the burning bush; David, a shepherd boy turned king; Esther, a queen who risked everything to save her people. Their paths were not easy, but their faith illuminated their way. They stood as beacons, guiding others through storms of doubt, fear, and adversity. Attributes of the chosen: strength, wisdom, and spiritual authority are the pillars of the chosen ones. Yet these are not innate traits. They are forged in the crucible of trial and surrender. Ezra discovered this truth when he faced his most significant test. A famine struck his land, leaving families desperate and divided. The elders convened, their faces etched with worry, but no solution seemed to satisfy. Ezra, now a young man, stood among them, his heart burning with a conviction he could not ignore. "We must share what little we have," he said. "Only by serving one another can we endure." His words met resistance. Some argued for self-preservation, others for abandoning the weak, but Ezra's calm certainty silenced the room. Slowly, the community began to follow his lead. Food was rationed, burdens shared, and a miraculous abundance seemed to emerge through the hardship. It was not the manna of Moses' time, but a provision just as divine. Ezra had not sought to lead, yet in choosing service over self, he became a leader. Actionable insights for today. The story of Ezra calls to us in modern times. In some measure, we are all called to lead, to shine. But leadership in the biblical sense is not about dominance, but servanthood. Jesus himself declared, "Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant." Returning to the beginning and moving forward reminds us of all that has happened in the story of Jesus. In some measure, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. To those reading this, ask yourself, what is your purpose? What light do you carry within you? Perhaps it is dimmed by fear or hidden by distraction. But like Ezra, you are called to rise. Align your energy with your highest purpose. Surrender to the voice that calls you to something greater. Signal your readiness, not just in thought but in action. Speak words of encouragement. Serve when it is inconvenient. Shine when it feels easier to dim. For the world does not need more followers of trends or pursuers of fleeting pleasures. It needs beacons of truth and hope. Ezra's story reminds us that the chosen ones are not born with crowns. They are forged in their willingness to follow the path of the cross. And when they do, they shine brighter than any star in Bethlehem's sky. Will you be among them? Number 3. The Silent Shepherd. The story of the Silent Shepherd is whispered among the hills of Galilee. His name was Yeshua, and though his deeds were known across the land, the man remained a profound enigma. People spoke of his miracles, his teachings, and how he seemed to carry the world's weight on his shoulders. Yet, not what he said or did drew the crowds. It was what he left unsaid. In an age when rabbis debated the most minor matters of the law, spilling their every thought in the public square, Yeshua often answered questions with silence or a simple story. His parables were like veiled windows. They offered a glimpse of truth, but never the whole view. To some, this was maddening. To others, it was magnetic. For in his restraint, Yeshua invited the listener to journey deeper, to uncover the mystery for themselves. One day, as the sun dipped below the hills, a crowd gathered by the Sea of Galilee. Among them were fishermen, shepherds, merchants, and even Pharisees who had come to test him. A young boy, no older than 10, sat at the edge of the throng, clutching a loaf of bread. He had heard tales of Yeshua feeding thousands with just a few loaves and fishes. Yet, he wondered, could such power come from a man so humble? Yeshua stood on the shore, gazing across the water. His eyes seemed to see something beyond the horizon, something the others could not. He turned to the crowd and they fell silent, expecting a grand proclamation. But instead he asked, "Why do you follow me?" The question hung in the air, heavy and challenging. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some came for healing, others for wisdom, and still others out of sheer curiosity. But Yeshua waited, saying nothing more. Finally, a woman stepped forward. Her face was lined with years of suffering, but her eyes were hopeful. "I follow because your words make me long for something greater," she said. Yeshua nodded, his expression both knowing and kind. Then he told them a story. The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field. In his joy, a man found it and sold all he had to buy the field. The crowd listened intently, but when he finished, there were no explanations, no clarifications. Some nodded, understanding immediately. Others furrowed their brows, puzzling over his meaning. Yet none could deny the power of his words. They lingered in the mind like a song half remembered, urging the listener to uncover the rest. Yeshua's silence was not empty. It was rich with purpose, drawing others to seek truth rather than be handed it. Unlike the Pharisees, who paraded their knowledge and sought admiration, Yeshua's mystery made him approachable and divine. His silence spoke louder than any sermon. The boy with the loaf of bread watched as Yeshua began to walk away. He wanted to follow, but fear held him back. Then, as if sensing the boy's hesitation, Yeshua turned and looked directly at him. He smiled, a smile that held 1,000 answers and more questions. In that moment, the boy understood. The power of Yeshua's mystery was not in solving it, but in living it. Years later, when the boy had grown into a man, he would tell his own children about the day he met the silent shepherd. "He didn't give me all the answers," he would say, "but he gave me something better, the courage to seek them myself." And so Yeshua's mystery continued to ripple through time, not in the grand declarations of kings, but in the quiet whispers of those whose lives he touched. The greatest truths, like treasures, are not found in plain sight. They are hidden, waiting for the seeker who dares to search. Number 4, the shepherd's silence. In the ancient hills of Judea, where the winds whispered secrets to the olive trees, there lived a shepherd named Elias. He was unlike the others, who sang songs to pass the time or shouted to rally their flocks. Elias was a man of profound silence. He carried an air of quiet confidence that both unsettled and intrigued those who met him. Though he rarely spoke, Elias's presence weighted it. His mere arrival at the market square drew attention. The merchants, accustomed to haggling and noise, would pause mid-sentence, their words faltering as if the air had grown heavier. It wasn't fear that silenced them, but something more profound. A sense of reverence, as if they were in the presence of something sacred yet unspoken. Elias's silence was not born of arrogance or indifference. It was purposeful, a stillness forged in the crucible of his faith. His actions spoke volumes where words failed. When a lamb wandered too close to the cliffs, Elias moved swiftly, cradling the creature in his arms and returning it to safety. When a traveler stumbled on the rocky paths, Elias was there, his strong hands lifting them without a word. One evening, as the sun bled crimson over the horizon, Elias found himself by a well, drawing water for his flock. A stranger approached, a man cloaked in shadows, his face obscured. "Shepherd," the man said, his voice a low rumble, "what gives you this power, this authority that demands respect without command?" Elias paused, his hands steady on the rope. He looked at the stranger, his eyes like twin beacons in the twilight. Finally he spoke, his voice soft but resonant, as if it carried the weight of ages. "Power is not in the voice, but in the spirit," Elias said. "The Creator, who shaped the stars and the earth, whispers to those who listen. I carry no power of my own. It is His strength, reflected through my stillness." The stranger's expression shifted, his shadowy visage softening. "And yet," he pressed, "you could command armies, sway crowds with a single word. Why do you remain silent?" My hand made the sign of the cross, but no words could express my sense of renewed conviction that this was the right thing to do. Elias smiled faintly, his gaze drifting to the horizon. "Because words often cloud truth," he said. "The Almighty revealed Himself in fire to Moses, yet His deepest truths came in stillness. The world clamors for noise, for speeches and declarations, but in the silence, the heart learns to hear what the ears cannot," he said. The last led to the stranger fell silent, pondering the shepherd's words. He vanished into the gathering darkness, leaving Elias alone with his flock. Days later, news spread of an attack on the nearby village. Bandits had raided in the night, leaving devastation in their wake. Elias journeyed there, his staff in hand, and found the villagers in despair. They huddled in the square, their faces pale with fear, their voices trembling with panic. Without a word, Elias moved among them, helping to gather the scattered belongings, lifting the broken beams of their homes, and tending to the wounded. His quiet strength gave the villagers courage. Slowly, they began to work alongside him, their despair transforming into determination. By nightfall, the village stood on the road to recovery, and Elias prepared to leave. An elder approached him, his voice thick with gratitude. "You've done more than rebuild our homes," he said. "You've restored our hope. But tell me, how does a shepherd command such respect without speeches or promises?" Elias looked at the elder, his gaze serene. "Respect is not demanded but inspired," he said. "The good shepherd leads not with shouts, but with love and sacrifice. In following Him, I've learned that actions speak louder than words ever could." The elder nodded, his eyes moist with understanding. Elias walked away into the night, his figure silhouetted against the stars. His silence remained, but it no longer needed explanation. Number 5. The Shepherd Who Spoke Fire. Beyond the boundaries of what men dared to map, a young shepherd named Liran tended his flock in the heart of the wilderness. The desert air shimmered, not with heat, but with something alive, a presence that pressed against the senses, filling every hollow space with an unspoken anticipation. Liran was unaware of how his quiet resolve and piercing gaze stirred something in the hearts of those who met him. He had no throne, army, or followers, yet his presence demanded attention, as though he carried an invisible crown. One evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, Liran approached a gnarled tree ablaze with a fire that did not consume it. The flames danced, not wild but with deliberate precision, and a voice, low, resonant, and eternal, spoke his name. "Liran, son of the dust, why do you stray from the city of men?" Startled but unafraid, he answered, "Because their words build walls, not bridges. I seek a truth no stone temple can hold." The voice chuckled, a sound both ancient and vibrant. "You seek what few dare. The path before you is perilous, but your steps have already been chosen." From that day, Liran bore a power he neither sought nor fully understood. It was not a power of might, but of magnetism. Wherever he wandered, people felt drawn to him. Farmers left their fields to hear him speak of the kingdom where no one hungered. Children clung to his robes, sensing his kindness like sunlight on their skin. Even the elders, gnarled as old olive trees, leaned in when he spoke, as though his words were the answer to prayers they had long stopped whispering. Liran's energy was magnetic, yet his nature was elusive. He moved as the wind, unpredictable and free, slipping away just as crowds formed around him. He was no rebel, no revolutionary, but a whisper of divine rebellion flowed through his actions. He spoke to outcasts as though they were kings, and to kings as though they were men. "Why do you not settle, shepherd?" asked a scholar, frustrated by Liran's refusal to establish a following. "Why do you wander, sowing seeds you cannot reap?" Liran smiled, his eyes bright with unearthly wisdom. "Because the fruit is not mine to harvest. What I plant will grow long after the sun has set on my days." And so it was. Even as rumors of him reached the ears of priests and rulers, Liran remained unshaken, his essence inimitable. Those who tried to mimic his words found their voices hollow. Others, seeking to exploit his following, discovered that the people were not bound to Liran by command, but by the quiet gravity of his being. One day, in a town perched on the edge of a parched valley, a man named Garan, brash and proud, challenged him. Garan's voice boomed as he accused Liran of being a fraud, a deceiver who wielded charisma like a blade. "If you are truly chosen," Garan sneered, "show us a sign. Call rain from the sky or part the river." Liran looked at him, not with anger but with a profound sorrow that silenced the crowd. "A sign? The stars themselves sing of the Creator's glory, and yet you do not hear. Why would my hand convince you when his hand has not?" The crowd murmured, and Garan slunk away, silenced by Liran's quiet authority. But Liran stayed, kneeling beside a crippled boy who had been pushed aside in the commotion. He spoke softly, and the boy rose to his feet, his limbs strong for the first time in years. It was not a display of power, but of compassion, a gift given without ceremony. And so Liran's journey continued, each step weaving a tapestry of hope in the hearts of those he met. But he knew his path would end in darkness before the light broke through. "The seed must fall to the earth and die," he told his closest companions one night, his voice heavy with meaning. They did not understand, but his words lingered, their weight sinking into their souls like roots into soil. When the day of his trial came, Liran stood before the council with the same quiet defiance that had marked his every step. They accused him, mocked him, and finally sentenced him. Yet as he walked to his fate, bound and bloodied, the crowd's hearts burned, not with anger, but with an unquenchable longing. They had glimpsed the shape of something eternal in him, a kingdom that could not be destroyed, a truth that no death could bury. And after Liran's story seemed to end, it began anew. Not in whispers, but in roaring flames. His name was carried by those who had walked with him, their voices spreading the message of the shepherd who spoke fire, the chosen one, whose energy could not be replicated, whose essence was uniquely divine. His story was told in every corner of the earth, not as a legend but as a truth that called out to every restless soul. "Come, and you will find what you were always seeking." Number 6. The story of a shepherd and his mission to change the world. In the heart of a bustling village, nestled within a valley of rolling hills, a young shepherd named Elias pondered life's mysteries. Known for his quiet demeanor and an unwavering love for the stars, Elias spent his nights gazing at the heavens, weaving questions about the divine into his nightly prayers. His neighbors dismissed him as a dreamer destined for an unremarkable life tending sheep. But the Creator had etched a different story for Elias, one that would defy the boundaries of human expectation and illuminate a legacy that could not be ignored. It began on a cold, clear night. The sky seemed unusually vivid, as though the stars were drawing closer to earth. Elias had just settled under the great oak tree that marked the edge of his family's pasture when a voice, clear and resonant, broke the stillness. "Elias, son of Amariah, rise." Elias, son of Amariah, rise. Startled, Elias looked around. The fields were empty save for his flock, now unnervingly still. "Who speaks?" he asked, his voice trembling. A light pierced the darkness, enveloping the shepherd. Within it stood a figure whose presence was both comforting and overwhelming. "Fear not, young one. I am Gabriel, messenger of the Most High. You have been chosen." Elias stammered, "Chosen? For what? I am but a shepherd. Surely you have the wrong man." Gabriel's eyes seemed to pierce into Elias's soul. "The wisdom of man often overlooks what the divine treasures. You have been chosen not for your might or wealth, but for your heart and faith. The Lord calls you to guide his people in times of great need." For days, Elias wrestled with the revelation. The village scoffed at his account of the angelic visitation. Even his closest friends suggested he might have dreamt it. Yet an unshakable certainty grew within him. Despite his doubts, Elias began to prepare. He spent hours in prayer and reflection, seeking guidance and strength. He abandoned the comfort of routine, stepping into the unknown with a faith as steadfast as the stars he loved. Word of Elias's vision spread, attracting curious travelers and skeptics alike. His small village became a gathering place for those seeking hope in a despair-filled world. Elias, guided by wisdom beyond his years, spoke of justice, mercy, and the boundless love of the Creator. His words were not elaborate, yet they carried an authority that silenced doubters and stirred hearts. Among those who came to hear him was Zara, a woman burdened by grief and guilt. She approached Elias one evening, her voice barely a whisper. "Can the Lord forgive someone like me?" Elias looked at her with compassion. "The Lord's mercy is like the ocean, vast and unfathomable. No sin is so great that his love cannot cover it." Zara's tears flowed freely, and in that moment, she found a peace she had thought lost forever. As the months turned into years, Elias's influence grew. He challenged the corrupt leaders who exploited the weak, urging them to repent and serve their people with integrity. He confronted injustices boldly, leaving many in awe, yet he did so without malice, always pointing others back to the Creator. One fateful day, a powerful ruler, offended by Elias' message, summoned him to his court. "You speak of a kingdom greater than mine," the ruler sneered. "Do you think your God will save you if I command your death?" Elias stood firm. "The Creator does not bow to earthly power. My life is but a thread in his grand tapestry. Do what you must, but know this: truth cannot be silenced." The ruler, moved by Elias's courage, chose to spare him, though he banished him from the kingdom. Yet even in exile, Elias's legacy flourished. His words and actions became stories passed from generation to generation, growing into a movement that inspired countless others to pursue lives of faith and courage. Elias never sought greatness, but his unwavering faith and bold obedience to the divine call left an indelible mark on history. His story reminds us that those who walk in the light of the Creator's purpose often tread paths unseen by others, defying expectations to build a legacy that echoes through eternity. Just as the stars shine brightest against the darkened sky, so too do the chosen illuminate the world, leaving behind a brilliance that time cannot dim. Number 7. The Chosen Visionary, a tale of foresight and faith. In the heart of the ancient city of Bethlehem, there was a young shepherd named Elon, who possessed an extraordinary gift. While others looked at the same stars scattered across the night sky, Elon saw a divine pattern hidden within their dance. Whispers of his uncanny foresight had reached the ears of many, and though he was but a humble shepherd, some believed he was destined for something far more significant. Elon's life changed one fateful evening when he ventured into the hills with his flock. An unearthly radiance lit up the landscape as the sun dipped below the horizon. A voice, firm yet filled with love, spoke his name. "Elon, son of the fields, I have chosen you." Elon fell to his knees, overwhelmed. Before him stood an angel cloaked in a shimmering light, its eyes holding the weight of eternity. "The people are blind to the future I have woven," the angel said, "but you shall see. You will guide them, for you possess the gift of vision, the ability to anticipate what others cannot." With these words, the angel touched Elon's brow, and a torrent of images surged into his mind. Kingdoms rising and falling, the suffering of the downtrodden, and the fulfillment of promises long foretold. From that day forward, Elon's life was no longer his own. He became a beacon for the lost, offering counsel to kings and comfort to the weary. Many marveled at his wisdom, for he seemed to know not only what was, but what would be. One evening, a group of scholars sought his guidance, curious about his gift. Elon's answer was simple yet profound. To see the future is not merely to know what will come, it is to understand the patterns of the present and the eternal truths that shape them. Faith is the lens through which I perceive these truths, and the Word of God is the foundation upon which they rest. But Elon's gift was not without burden. He foresaw a great famine sweeping the land, leaving countless lives in peril. The powerful met his warnings with skepticism and scorn, dismissing him as a dreamer. Yet Elon's foresight proved unerring. With unwavering resolve, he rallied the common folk, teaching them to store grain and prepare for the harsh years ahead. When the famine struck, his wisdom saved many from despair. Elon's defining moment came in the twilight of his life. One night, he was visited by a vision of a child born in a stable, destined to change the world. He saw shepherds like himself kneeling before the child, their faces illuminated by heavenly light. He saw wise men offering gifts and a star guiding the way. This child, Elon realized, was the fulfillment of every promise he had ever glimpsed in his visions. "What should I do, Lord?" Elon prayed, his voice trembling, and the same voice that had called him on the hills so many years before answered, "Prepare the way." Elon spent his final years ensuring the people were ready for the arrival of the Messiah. He shared his visions with anyone who would listen, urging them to watch for the signs and to hold fast to hope. Though he never lived to see the child himself, his faith and foresight left a legacy that endured for generations. As the years passed, the people came to honor Elon as a prophet. They spoke of his unshakable faith, ability to see what others could not, and tireless efforts to guide them through their darkest hours. But Elon's greatest lesson was not his gift of foresight, but his trust in the one who holds the future. True vision, he often said, is not merely about seeing what lies ahead. It is about trusting the one who knows the end from the beginning. And so, the story of Elon, the chosen visionary, became a timeless reminder that faith and foresight, when guided by the divine, can illuminate the path even in the deepest darkness. Through his life, the people learned that while they might not always see the full picture, they could walk confidently forward, knowing that God's hand was at work in every moment. Number 8. The Shepherd King, a tale of boldness and redemption. In the heart of the ancient land of Judah, a young shepherd named David watched over his flock beneath a canopy of stars. The air was crisp, scented with wild thyme and the promise of rain. David was not an ordinary boy. There was a fire in his spirit, a boldness that seemed too vast for one so young. He had been anointed by Samuel, the prophet of the Most High, to one day become king, a destiny he could scarcely fathom. But David's journey to the throne was not one of smooth roads or gilded palaces. It began instead with a battlefield. The Philistines, Judah's sworn enemies, had mustered their armies, and with them came a giant, a hulking warrior named Goliath. His voice roared across the valley, challenging any man brave enough to face him. Fear paralyzed the army of Israel, for Goliath was a terror, a monument of strength and savagery. Still a boy, David arrived at the camp to bring food to his brothers. Yet what he found there stirred his righteous indignation. How could the armies of the living God cower before a mortal? David stepped forward with a sling and 5 smooth stones to meet the giant. His courage was not rooted in bravado, but in an unshakable faith. "You come against me with sword, spear, and javelin," he declared, "but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel." David felled the giant with a single stone, and his boldness reverberated across the ages. It was not merely the act of slaying Goliath that made David remarkable, but his willingness to defy societal expectations and trust in a power greater than himself. He carved his path, rejecting the armor and strategies of men to align with the divine purpose set before him. David's rise to the throne was fraught with trials. Saul, the reigning king, burned with jealousy and sought to kill him. David lived as a fugitive, hiding in caves and wildernesses, constantly in peril. Yet, in his suffering, he composed psalms that would endure for millennia. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want," he wrote, encapsulating the paradox of his life. a man who lacked everything yet possessed the unshakable assurance of God's providence. When David finally ascended to the throne, his reign was marked by moments of brilliance and failure. He united the tribes of Israel, brought the Ark of the Covenant to Jerusalem, and established a kingdom that became the envy of nations. Yet he was not without flaws. His sin with Bathsheba and the subsequent fallout revealed even the mightiest men's frailty. But David's story did not end in disgrace. In his repentance, he demonstrated the transformative power of grace. "Create in me a pure heart, O God," he pleaded, "and renew a steadfast spirit within me." David's life was a tapestry of contrasts: humility and boldness, faith and failure, victory and repentance. His story set new standards for leadership, courage, and pursuing divine purpose. It inspired not only his contemporaries, but also generations to come. Even the Messiah, Jesus Christ, would be called the Son of David, fulfilling the promise that David's lineage would endure forever. The tale of David reminds us that greatness is not the absence of imperfection, but the willingness to rise above it. It challenges us to step into our battles, to face the giants that loom large in our lives with faith and courage. Like David, we are called to reject the world's conventional wisdom and align ourselves with higher truths, to carve paths of authenticity and boldness in a world that often demands conformity. Number 9. The grace beyond trials. The hills of Judea were barren that year, a stark reminder of the fragility of human effort against the vastness of God's creation. Among those trudging through the dust was Nathanael, a shepherd known for his unwavering faith. Yet, in the silence of the desert winds, even he wrestled with doubts that gnawed at the edges of his soul. His flock had dwindled, his children cried for bread, and his prayers seemed unanswered. In the face of relentless adversity, Nathanael's resilience would become a testament to the strength forged in faith. The story of Nathanael echoes the trials of Job, whose fortunes were stripped from him yet refused to curse God. In Nathanael's case, it began with a drought, a calamity that turned green pastures into arid wastelands. His once thriving herd dwindled to a few gaunt sheep. Neighbors whispered that he must have sinned to deserve such misfortune, their words sharp as thorns. One night as he knelt beneath a canopy of stars, Nathanael cried out, "Lord, why have you forsaken me? Have I not kept your commandments? Have I not walked humbly in your ways?" The heavens, vast and silent, gave no reply. Yet, deep within his heart, a flicker of hope stirred. It was not the voice of rebuke or answer he sought, but a gentle reminder of a truth he had almost forgotten. God's silence does not mean his absence. Determined, Nathanael rose each day with renewed vigor. He toiled from dawn to dusk, digging wells and seeking sustenance for his family. His hands bore blisters and his back ached under the relentless sun, yet his spirit remained unbroken. Each setback became a lesson in endurance. When a well he dug yielded only rocks, he moved to another spot, whispering, "The Lord provides." When wolves attacked his few remaining sheep, he stood guard through the night, his staff a symbol of both protection and faith. Nathanael's persistence drew the attention of others. A fellow shepherd, Simon, approached him one morning. "Why do you labor so when the odds are against you?" Simon asked, his tone tinged with skepticism. Nathanael replied, "The odds are not mine to weigh. My task is to trust and to act. The outcome belongs to the Lord." Simon's heart was stirred, and he offered to share his dwindling resources with Nathanael. Together they began to rebuild, their efforts fueled by a shared faith that God's promises were not bound by human understanding. Their small cooperation inspired others in the village, sparking a collective resilience that transformed despair into hope. In time, the rains returned. The land, once parched and lifeless, blossomed anew. Nathanael's flock grew stronger, his children's laughter filled their home, and the village thrived. Yet, not the restoration of material blessings defined Nathanael's journey. It was the transformation within, a deeper trust in God's providence, and a recognition that trials, though painful, were the crucibles of spiritual growth. This story mirrors the teachings of the Apostle Paul, who wrote, "We rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope." Romans 5:03 verses 4. Nathanael's resilience was not born of mere stubbornness, but of hope transcending the immediate. Like a candle in the darkness, his faith illuminated the path for others. Nathanael's journey challenges us to reconsider how we view failure in setbacks. Too often we see them as signs of God's disfavor or insurmountable barriers. Yet, as Nathanael's life demonstrates, these moments can be growth opportunities. They remind us of our dependence on God and our capacity to inspire others through perseverance. In reflecting on Nathanael's story, we are invited to ask ourselves, how do we respond when faced with our deserts? Do we despair or dig deeper, trusting that beneath the barren surface lies a spring of living water? Do we isolate ourselves, or do we seek the fellowship of others, recognizing that resilience is often a communal effort? The grace beyond trials is the resolution of suffering and the transformation it brings. It is the deepening of faith, the forging of character, and the ripple effect of hope that touches the lives of others. Like Nathanael, may we rise each day with the quiet assurance that our struggles are not in vain, for they are held in the hands of a God who brings beauty from ashes and joy from mourning. Number 10. The Shepherd's Vision, a tale of fearless leadership. In the small village of Bethany, nestled at the crossroads of bustling trade routes, the people often spoke in hushed tones of a man whose wisdom seemed otherworldly. His name was Joshua, a humble carpenter with no title to his name, yet his words carried the weight of kings, and his actions spoke louder than any decree. Joshua was no ordinary man. His leadership emerged not from a throne, but from the clarity of his vision. A vision that sought to unite the broken, comfort the weary, and challenge the powerful to live righteously. This purpose, so pure and unwavering, drew people to him. His followers were not bound by obligation, but by a profound respect for his steadfast example. A crisis arose one blistering afternoon as the sun cast long shadows over the arid hills. A group of desperate travelers stumbled into the village, weak from hunger and thirst. Their plight was evident, yet the townsfolk hesitated. Resources were scarce, and the threat of bandits loomed. In this moment of fear and doubt, Joshua stepped forward, his calm demeanor cutting through the murmur of uncertainty. "Do not be afraid," he said, his voice steady and resolute. "When we serve others, we reflect the image of the Creator who provides abundantly." His words carried a peculiar authority, not commanding but inviting. As if compelled by some unseen force, the villagers brought what little they had: loaves of bread, jars of water, even a few figs. Joshua knelt among the travelers, offering sustenance with a gentleness that made even the smallest gift feel like a feast. The travelers' gratitude was palpable, and their spirits revived, but the villagers felt truly transformed. They discovered a strength they didn't know they possessed in their giving. Joshua's leadership was not confined to acts of charity. He was equally unyielding in moments of moral confrontation. One day, a wealthy merchant arrived in the village, flaunting his riches and demanding deference. The man's arrogance was palpable, and his disregard for the less fortunate was evident in his dismissive sneers. Joshua approached the man with neither anger nor submission, his calm presence disarming. "The counsel of the devil," Joshua headed. "What does it profit a man?" Joshua asked. "To gain the world, but lose his soul." The merchant, caught off guard by the piercing question, laughed nervously. Yet the villagers, emboldened by Joshua's fearlessness, began to murmur in agreement. In that moment, the illusion of the merchant's power crumbled. It was not wealth or status that commanded respect, but the integrity of one's actions and the depth of one's compassion. As word of Joshua's deeds spread, people from neighboring towns began to visit Bethany, seeking his counsel and the peace that seemed to radiate from him. He welcomed them all: farmers, beggars, scholars, and soldiers, each finding a sense of purpose and belonging in his presence. Despite the growing crowd, Joshua remained humble, reminding his followers that true leadership was not about being served, but serving others. He often told them the story of the shepherd who left the 99 to find the lost one when one sheep went astray. "A leader's worth," he would say, "is measured by their willingness to seek out and care for the least of these." Once divided by fear and mistrust, the villagers began to emulate Joshua's example. They helped one another, forgave past grievances, and faced challenges with renewed courage. Joshua's vision had become their own, and in living it, they discovered a profound truth: leadership, was not a solitary burden, but a shared journey. One evening, as the stars blanketed the sky, a young boy asked Joshua how he remained so calm in the face of adversity. Joshua smiled, his eyes reflecting the light of the heavens. "Fear is a shadow," he said, "but faith is the sun. When we walk in the light, shadows cannot hold us." And so the story of Joshua spread, not as a tale of a man who sought power, but as a testament to the transformative power of fearless leadership. In his actions, the people saw a reflection of the divine, a leader who led not with titles or authority, but with love, courage, and an unshakable vision of a better world. In the years to come, the village of Bethany thrived, not because of wealth or might, but because of the seeds Joshua had planted. His example lived on, a reminder that the greatest leaders inspire others to rise beyond fear and walk boldly in the light of truth and compassion. Number 11. The divine alignment, walking in purpose and grace. In the quiet hills of Galilee, where the morning sun gilds the olive trees and the air carries whispers of ancient prophecies, a man walked with a purpose as deep as eternity. His deliberate yet unhurried steps echoed a truth transcending time, a reality that would reshape the world forever. This was no ordinary man. This was Jesus of Nazareth, whose life was a living testament to divine alignment and the magnetic pull of God's purpose. From the beginning of his ministry, it was clear that Jesus possessed an inner alignment unlike anything the world had ever seen. This was not the alignment of ambition or earthly goals, but a profound attunement to the will of the Father. When he stood on the banks of the Jordan River, the heavens opened and a voice declared, "This is my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased." Matthew chapter 3, verse 17. It was a moment of divine affirmation that set the stage for all that was to come. Jesus did not seek opportunities. Opportunities found him. Crowds gathered wherever he went, not because he advertised his works or sought fame, but because his presence radiated something irresistible. Like a lighthouse drawing ships to safety, Jesus drew the weary, the broken, and the searching. The woman at the well in Samaria, ostracized and thirsty for more than water, found her life transformed after a single encounter. "Come see a man who told me everything I ever did," she exclaimed to her village, John 4:29. In his presence, her shame was replaced by joy, her isolation by belonging. This magnetic pull was not merely a result of charisma or eloquence, it was the natural outflow of his alignment with the Father's will. Jesus himself said, "I do nothing on my own but speak just what the Father has taught me," John chapter 8, verse 28. This unshakable focus on divine purpose made him a conduit of grace and truth, capable of transforming even the darkest hearts. Consider the calling of the disciples. These were ordinary men, fishermen, tax collectors, zealots, yet they left everything to follow him. When Jesus told Peter and Andrew, "Come, follow me, and I will send you out to fish for people," Matthew 4:19, they abandoned their nets immediately. His invitation carried a weight and authority that could not be ignored. It wasn't his promise of material gain that drew them, but the allure of a life aligned with eternal purpose. Even in the face of opposition, Jesus' confidence in his mission remained unwavering. When confronted by the Pharisees, who sought to trap him with clever questions, he answered with wisdom that silenced their schemes and left the crowds marveling. When threatened with violence, he walked through the midst of his enemies, untouched because his time had not yet come. There was an aura of inevitability around him, a sense that no force on earth could derail his mission. The cross, the ultimate test of his alignment, demonstrated the magnetic power of his life in the most profound way. Betrayed, abandoned, and crucified, Jesus still drew people to himself. The thief on the cross beside him, a man condemned by society, recognized the divine in him and pleaded, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." Luke chapter 23, verse 42. Even in his final moments, Jesus' unwavering purpose brought salvation to the undeserving. What can we, as modern readers, learn from this story? At its heart, Jesus' life teaches us that true success and fulfillment come not from chasing after opportunities, but from aligning ourselves with God's purpose. When we center our lives on Him, we too become conduits of His grace and truth. Our inner confidence and alignment will naturally draw the right people, circumstances, and opportunities, just as it did for Jesus. Imagine a life where you no longer strive or struggle to make things happen, where your very being becomes a beacon of hope and transformation. This is the life Jesus offers to those who follow him. Seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Matthew chapter 6, verse 33. It is a promise that resonates through the ages, inviting us to step into the divine alignment that transforms not only our own lives, but the world around us. In this alignment, we discover that we are not alone. Like the disciples, we are part of a more fantastic story that began before the foundations of the world and will continue into eternity. And as we walk in step with the Spirit, we will find that our lives, like Jesus's, carry a magnetic pull, drawing others to the source of all purpose and grace. The hills of Galilee may seem far away, but their lesson is as close as the beating of your heart. Align yourself with God's purpose and watch as his blessings flow. Not because you have sought them, but because they have sought you. Like Jesus, you were made to walk in divine alignment, to live a life that draws others to the light of his love. And in that alignment, you will find the fullness of life, both now and forever. Number 12, the masterpiece of grace. In the timeless pursuit of excellence, there exists a narrative that transcends human understanding. A story of a creator who infused his creation with purpose and invited them to share in his eternal masterpiece. This is not merely a tale of gods and mortals, but the story of divine craftsmanship and unyielding love, told through the pages of the Bible. It is a story that stirs the heart and calls each reader to rise above mediocrity, to embrace a life of high standards and relentless pursuit of greatness. From the opening words of Genesis, we are introduced to a God who sets the standard for excellence. And God saw that it was good. These simple yet profound words punctuate each act of creation, reflecting the Creator's meticulous attention to detail. The heavens declare his glory, the earth sings his praises, and humanity, made in his image, stands as the pinnacle of his work. Yet the crowning act of creation was not in the molding of stars or the stretching of galaxies. It was the invitation extended to humankind, to walk with him, to know him, and to share in the stewardship of his world. This divine invitation demands more than mere existence. It calls for a life of purpose and intentionality, marked by the pursuit of excellence. The story of the Bible unfolds with characters who embraced this call, and through their triumphs and failures, they reveal the depth of God's grace and the height of his standards. Consider Noah, a man of unwavering faith who dared to follow God's command in a world corrupted by wickedness. With no evidence of rain, he built an ark, a vessel of salvation and a testament to his trust in God's vision. His story reminds us that excellence is often born in the face of ridicule and that true greatness requires perseverance beyond what is seen. Lydia made it her life's mission to inspire people to pursue riches beyond what is seen. Then there is Joseph, whose life exemplifies resilience and integrity. Betrayed by his brothers and sold into slavery, he rose to prominence in Egypt not through cunning or deceit, but through steadfast trust in God's plan. His ability to forgive those who wronged him and to use his position for the greater good showcases the transformative power of aligning one's life with divine purpose. And what of Moses, the reluctant leader who dared to confront Pharaoh, the most powerful man on earth? Moses' journey from a hesitant shepherd to the deliverer of Israel illustrates the power of God to work through human frailty. His life is a testament to the truth that excellence is not about perfection, but faithfulness to the call. End of note. Central to this narrative of divine pursuit is the person of Jesus Christ, the ultimate embodiment of excellence and grace. We see the perfect blend of humility and authority in him, justice and mercy. His life on earth was a masterpiece of love and sacrifice, a life lived not for himself, but for the redemption of humanity. His words, "Follow me," are not a mere suggestion, but a challenge to live with purpose, love without limits, and strive for God's kingdom. The pursuit of excellence is not confined to the heroes of the Bible. It is a call that echoes through the corridors of time, reaching into our modern lives. The biblical narrative inspires us to aim higher in a world that often celebrates mediocrity and compromises on integrity. It reminds us that true greatness lies not in the applause of men, but in faithfulness to God. To live a life of excellence mirrors the Creator in our thoughts, words, and deeds. It is to approach each task, no matter how mundane, with the same diligence and care God displayed in crafting the universe. It is to inspire others, not through arrogance, but through the quiet strength of a life well lived. This divine standard is not meant to burden, but to liberate. It is an invitation to enter the fullness of who we were created to be. The Apostle Paul captures this beautifully in his letter to the Colossians. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters. Herein lies the secret to a life of significance, living not for this world's fleeting rewards, but for heaven's eternal applause. The Bible's story is not just about what God has done, but about what He is still doing. It is about the lives He is shaping, the hearts He is transforming, and the excellence He is cultivating in those who dare to trust Him. Like a master artist, God is at work, and each of us is a part of His grand design. As you reflect on this story, consider your place within it. What masterpiece is God calling you to create? What standard of excellence is He inviting you to pursue? Remember, excellence is not a destination, but a journey, a lifestyle shaped by unyielding effort and a refusal to settle for less than God's best. And in this pursuit, you are never alone, for the author of this great story walks with you every step of the way. Number 13. The unshakable spirit, strength in the hands of God. There was once a man named Caleb, a humble carpenter who lived in a small village between rolling hills and vast wheat fields. Caleb was not an extraordinary man by worldly standards, but a spirit of unwavering faith burned within him. His life was simple. He worked with his hands, provided for his family, and worshipped God with gratitude. Yet, his faith would soon be tested in ways no mortal could have imagined. One fateful evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky with hues of gold and crimson, a messenger arrived with grim news. A devastating storm was sweeping toward the village, threatening to destroy everything in its path. The villagers were filled with fear, but Caleb stood among them with a calm resolve. "We will prepare," Caleb said, his voice steady. "But above all, we will trust in the Lord. He has never forsaken us and will not abandon us now." The villagers rallied under Caleb's leadership, building barricades and reinforcing their homes. Though his hands ached from labor, Caleb prayed without ceasing, asking God for strength to protect his people. When the storm finally arrived, it was as if the heavens roared with fury. Winds howled, trees were uprooted, and the rain fell in torrents. The villagers huddled together, fear gripping their hearts. Caleb, however, stood at the center of the crowd, his hands raised to the sky. "Lord, you are our refuge and our fortress," he declared. "In you we place our trust." The storm raged through the night, and when dawn broke, the village was left battered but not broken. Miraculously, no lives were lost. The villagers marveled at Caleb's faith and the unseen hand that seemed to shield them from disaster. But Caleb's trials were far from over. The storm had destroyed their crops, leaving the village on the brink of starvation. Despair began to creep into the hearts of the people. Caleb knew that he could not allow hopelessness to take root. "God has brought us through the storm," he reminded them. "He will not leave us now. We must sow what little we have left and trust in His provision." With what remained of their seeds, the villagers replanted their fields. Day after day, Caleb led them in prayer, asking God to bless their efforts. Once scorched and barren, the land began to yield a harvest so abundant that it defied explanation. The villagers rejoiced, their faith renewed. They saw an example of unwavering trust in God in Caleb, even in the face of insurmountable odds. His life became a living testament to the truth of Scripture. "When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you." Isaiah 43:2. Caleb's story spread beyond the village, inspiring countless others to face their own trials with courage and faith. Strangers traveled from distant lands to hear him speak, not because of his eloquence, but because of the undeniable power of his testimony. "You see," Caleb would say, "adversity is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of God's work in us. The storm may come, the fields may wither, but the hand of God is always at work, shaping us, refining us, and preparing us for greater things. Through Caleb's example, people learned that challenges were not merely obstacles to overcome, but opportunities to grow closer to God. His faith reminded them that the strength to endure does not come from within, but from above. In the following years, Caleb continued to serve his village, not as a leader of wealth or power, but as a man of unshakable spirit. His faith turned adversity into triumph, and his story became a beacon of hope for all who heard it. In Caleb's journey, the timeless truth resounded. God does not promise a life free of trials, but He does promise His presence in every storm. And through those storms, He shapes us into vessels of His glory. As Caleb often said, "The strongest trees grow against the wind, their roots digging deeper into the earth." So it is with our faith. It grows stronger when tested, grounding us firmly in the love of our Creator. In this, Caleb's life mirrored the story of countless heroes of Scripture, from Job to Joseph, who found strength in God amidst their trials. His legacy reminds us that no matter how fierce the storm, we are never alone, for the one who calms the seas walks beside us, guiding us toward the light of a new dawn. Number 14. The eternal legacy of grace and redemption. In a humble corner of the ancient world, the story of grace and redemption unfolded, a story that would shape the lives of countless generations and inspire a vision of hope amid despair. It begins not in palaces of power, but in the fields of shepherds and the lives of fishermen, where the extraordinary pierced the ordinary and forever altered the course of human history. A kingdom of paradoxes, the life of Jesus Christ, central to the biblical narrative, defied every expectation of success. Born in a manger, His entrance into the world was marked not by regal proclamation but by the quiet worship of shepherds under the stars. The contrast was striking. The Savior of the world arrived without armies or riches. Yet, this humility was a declaration of a kingdom not bound by human constructs of power. Jesus' teachings were similarly paradoxical. "Blessed are the poor in spirit," He proclaimed, "for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." These words, spoken during the Sermon on the Mount, resonated deeply with those forgotten by society. The meek, mourning, and persecuted were not merely pitied but celebrated as heirs to an eternal inheritance. Such radical inclusivity subverted the norms of the day and planted seeds of a world transformed by grace. The measure of success. Jesus' success was not marked by material wealth or political power, but by the number of lives He inspired. His miracles were not mere displays of divine authority. They were acts of compassion that revealed the heart of God. The feeding of the 5,000 was more than the multiplication of bread. It was a testament to God's provision. The healing of the blind and the raising of Lazarus from the dead proclaimed a kingdom where brokenness would be restored. Perhaps most remarkable was His willingness to invest in the unlikely. Fishermen like Peter, a tax collector like Matthew, and even zealots like Simon became the foundation of His ministry. Chronicled in the Gospels, their transformation is a powerful example of how ordinary people can carry an extraordinary message. A defining sacrifice. The climax of Jesus' story was His crucifixion, a moment that appeared by all earthly measures to be a failure. Yet it was here that the paradox of His kingdom shone brightest. On the cross, Jesus bore the weight of humanity's sin. His cry, "It is finished," was not one of defeat, but triumph. The temple's veil was torn, symbolizing the restoration of a broken relationship between God and humanity. 3 days later, His resurrection solidified His victory over sin and death, offering a hope that transcended human mortality. This event became the cornerstone of Christian faith, a vivid reminder that God's greatest triumph often comes through what the world deems weak or foolish. A legacy of transformation. The influence of Jesus' life extends far beyond His time on earth. His teachings have inspired movements for justice, compassion, and equality throughout history. From the abolition of slavery to establishing hospitals and schools, His followers have sought to embody the radical love He demonstrated. The Apostle Paul, once a persecutor of Christians, became one of the most fervent proponents of this message. In his letters, he wrote, "For when I am weak, then I am strong," echoing the paradoxical strength of surrender to God. Paul's transformation and his missionary journeys are a testament to the enduring power of Jesus' story to inspire resilience and courage. Lasting influence. Today, the legacy of Jesus remains a legendary example of redemption and hope. His life and teachings challenge us to redefine success not as the accumulation of power or wealth, but as the impact we have on the lives of others. He invites us to a life of courage, where love overcomes fear and grace triumphs over judgment. This story of grace and redemption continues to unfold. Each act of kindness, each moment of forgiveness, echoes the kingdom Jesus proclaimed. It is an invitation not merely to admire his legacy, but to participate in it, to be transformed, and in turn, to transform the world. In the words of C.S. Lewis, God doesn't want something from us, he simply wants us. And in this surrender, we find the courage to live lives of extraordinary purpose, carrying forward a legacy that will endure for all eternity. Number 15. The Chosen One Within, a tale of unshakable faith. In the heart of a world drenched in chaos, where shadows of doubt cast their gloom over human hearts, there lies a spark, small but unquenchable. The divine thread weaves through the fabric of creation, reminding us that we are not merely wanderers, but pilgrims called to a purpose. This is the story of Jonathan, a man who dared to believe that even the most ordinary soul could be chosen to rewrite the narrative of history. Jonathan was, by all accounts, a man of little consequence. He tilled his small patch of land, broke bread with his neighbors, and lived a life so quiet it seemed invisible. Yet, as is often the way of the Creator, the most profound callings arise not from the thunderclap, but from the whisper. On an evening bathed in golden light, as Jonathan sat beneath an ancient oak tree, the whisper came. "Jonathan, rise," said the voice, neither loud nor soft, but resonant with eternity. "I have chosen you to be a light in the darkness, a voice in the wilderness." At first Jonathan laughed. "Surely, Lord, you have mistaken me for someone else. I am but a farmer. My hands know the soil, not the sword. My tongue is clumsy, not eloquent. Choose another." But the voice persisted. "It is precisely your ordinariness that makes you extraordinary in my hands. Trust not in your strength, but in mine. Through you I will show the world that my power is made perfect in weakness." And so began Jonathan's journey, not as a warrior or a king, but as a servant of unshakable confidence. He stepped forward, trembling but resolute, his faith tethered not to his abilities, but to the one who called him. Each step he took seemed small, insignificant, yet it rippled outward in ways he could not see. A kind word to a stranger became the seed of reconciliation. A prayer whispered in solitude became the spark of revival. Jonathan learned that confidence is not the absence of fear, but the presence of trust. A trust that the author of all things has written a story in which even the most minor roles carry eternal significance. The key was not to strive for greatness, but to remain faithful in the small things. For in the kingdom of God, the last shall be first, and the meek shall inherit the earth. Jonathan's life became a testimony to those around him as time passed. People began to see not a farmer, but a man who walked with the weight of divine purpose. They were drawn to the light in him, which was not his own, but reflected from the one who dwelled within him. It was as if Jonathan's life had become a living parable, a reminder that history is not shaped by the mighty alone, but by the faithful. One evening, as Jonathan sat again beneath the oak tree, now weathered and gray with age, he reflected on the path he had walked. He thought of the lives touched, the hearts mended, and the hope rekindled. He realized that he had become more than a part of history. He had helped to shape it. For each act of love, each step of obedience, had woven a tapestry that stretched far beyond his understanding. The voice came to him again, not as a command, but as a quiet affirmation. "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many. Enter into the joy of your Lord." Jonathan smiled, not with pride, but with a deep, abiding peace. He had not sought greatness, yet greatness had found him in the form of faithfulness. He had not set out to become a chosen one, yet by answering the call, he had stepped into the fullness of his identity. The story of Jonathan is not merely his own. It is the story of all who dare to believe they are chosen too. It is an invitation to step into the light, to embrace the calling written into the depths of their being. For we are all, in some way, called to be a light in the darkness, a voice in the wilderness, a spark that ignites the flame of hope. As you read this, let the words sink deep into your soul. The same voice that called Jonathan calls you now. It whispers, "Rise, trust not in your strength but in mine. For you too are chosen to shape history." Will you answer?